The Giants' situation right now is so bad, centering around that quarterback position and their inability to protect him, his inability to perform at the level that you would want a starting quarterback to perform at in the NFL, especially one in his 6th season. The situation is so dire, Damian, that the opponent whose literal job it is, who all week from Monday all the way leading up until Sunday's kickoff, they were being told by all of their coaches and staff meetings and teams meetings and position breakouts, hey, get after that guy, make his life a living hell, take the ball away, and get some points for us. Those guys who are being preached at, who are having that kind of messaging drilled into their head, are feeling bad for them. I mean, how horrible does your situation have to be where the guys you're going at war against have remorse, have sympathy?
I think that's the first time since I've been watching the NFL that I've ever heard a player like on the other side feel bad for the quarterback on the other side. The guy you're supposed to be, like you said, trying to rip his head off. But everything is stacking up against Daniel Jones, whether it's the pressure of them getting a brand new O-line, getting him a wide receiver 1, and we've seen the sample size of other quarterbacks, what they've done when they got the wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Everything is stacking up against Daniel Jones, whether it's Saquon Barkley in Philly. Everything we can talk about as far as pressure, it's all stacking up on Daniel Jones.
Though it feels like the world is kind of caving in around him, right? The fans are against him. He has players in his own locker room who are undermining him. He has his own performances that he has to live with. But the one thing he does have to fall back on in the midst of all of this is a heap load of cash. $160 million off that contract he signed a couple of years ago when the Giants invested in him, all based off of 1 year. All based off of one mediocre year as a quarterback where they beat the Vikings in the playoffs. Daniel Jones is set for life. Generational money. Of course, he's likely not seeing through the end of that deal. The back end that's not guaranteed is going to go to waste because they are likely cutting that guy or trading him at the end of this season. But Daniel Jones at least has that financial security. He was able to secure it as a quarterback out of Duke, going to the Giants as a top 10 pick. He at least got the bag.
Shout out to his agent.
So, and again, yes, shout out to his agent. Also, shout out to poor decision-making from Joe Schoen in the Giants front office. We won't get into that today, but what I will talk about is I don't feel bad for Daniel Jones. I don't have the same amount of sympathy that you have for Daniel Jones as I would for guys that have to, again, go out into those practices with the New York Giants. Guys that have to strap up their helmets and shoulder pads and hop out there on that terrible turf that they have and try and play football games alongside Daniel Jones. In the NFL, and really in football in general, at any level, you don't really have a shot to win if you don't have a guy at quarterback that you at least feel confident in. I'm not saying you have to have the elite of the elite. I'm not saying the guy has to be a Pro Bowler, an MVP candidate, or maybe at the college level, a Heisman candidate, a Conference Player of the Year honoree. But you have to at least have a dude that can move the sticks when you need him to. A dude who has a level of leadership that has other people around him buying in. And I feel bad. I am starting to feel football bad for every single guy that has to suit up for the New York Giants, most specifically the number one option out in New York. The prize of the draft for the Giants and Joe Schoen. The guy that had Brian Daboll just literally foaming at the mouth when he was talking about him on Hard Knocks this offseason, and that's Malik Nabers. Y'all feel bad for Daniel Jones. I feel terrible for Malik Nabers, who has to go out there and as a number one option, as a guy that's coming off of a season with LSU, who he had the best of all worlds at LSU. Malik Nabers is lining up on the outside at LSU. He looks across the field. He sees Brian Thomas Jr., who also went in the first round of this draft to the Jacksonville Jaguars, so the defense can't put too much pressure on him. Oh, and who did he have slinging the ball to him, Damian, at LSU last year? Jaden Daniels, who not only won the Heisman, but also got selected number 2 overall in this past NFL draft to the Washington Commanders. Had a really good debut, even though they got blown out. I can't wait to see what he looks like in the league. But
who they will be playing on Sunday, by the way.
Yeah.
Washington, New York.
Yeah. He'll have to play against Jaden Daniels. And here's the saddest part, Damian. The reason why I really do feel bad for Malik Nabers and why I feel like he's the one that should be drawing everybody's pity party, everybody's tears when you're like, oh, I can't believe this guy has to go through this. Before the NFL draft, Jaden Daniels and Malik Nabers, who were teammates in Baton Rouge, who put up prolific points and statistics in Baton Rouge for LSU. In fact, Jaden Daniels helped Malik Nabers become the all-time receptions leader at LSU, a school that has had the likes of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, they, if not Ohio State, can claim to be wide receiver U. He also had the most receiving yards. So yards and receptions leader all time for LSU, that is Malik Nabers. He goes from playing with that guy, and before the draft, he and Jaden Daniels had a bet, a little friendly wager. They said, hey, let's put something down on each other here for who gets Offensive Player of the Year. Reasonable bet. A reasonable bet from two guys who are going to be top 10 picks, two guys who have a lot of confidence in themselves and who were going to be looking to get a lot of opportunity going into the NFL. After Malik Nabers was drafted to the New York Giants and he showed up for rookie camp, you know what one of the first things he did, Damian?
What was that?
Called off that bet.
Smart man.
He got one look at Daniel Jones in person. He said, brother, I'm good. He said, Jaden Daniels, I love you, man. We had a great time together. I want to be a man of my word, but ain't no way in hell I'm winning Rookie of the Year when I have to count on this dude to get the football for me. And this is not Daniel Jones hate. This is more so an indictment on the New York Giants front office for making a poor decision on a quarterback that had 1 year that was slightly above mediocre and a team that overachieved because of the perceived genius of Brian Daboll. But this is also just saying, I feel terrible for Malik Nabers. Now he has to answer questions from the media in New York every single week where he's a 21-year-old, right? He's a Ferrari at receiver. He's used to getting, pelleted with targets. He's used to being the center of an offense and being electric and being able to be a guy that gets rack yards and just all over the field, one of the fastest, strongest receivers we'll see. Gets a lot of comps to Jamar Chase, actually. And now he's in a position where his quarterback can't get him the ball. His offensive line, though improved, doesn't seem like it's good enough to even give Daniel Jones enough time to give him the ball. And that perceived genius in Brian Daboll, as you're making your dreams come true and going to the Giants and thinking, hey, I have a great play caller as a head coach, he's left answerless. Take a listen to this. Brian Daboll, when asked literally today, how do you get Malik Nabers more involved in the passing offense? He only had 5 receptions for 56 yards in week 1. Here's Daboll.
Throw him the ball.
Really?
Were there times that you thought the ball was going there and Daniel directed it otherwise?
No, I thought Daniel, again, we talked, I don't want to live too much in last week. We're moving on. But, move him around like we do. And if he's the first read, he's the first read. If he's the second read. But continue to work with him, and when he's open, give it to him.
Yeah, when he's open, give it to him. I'll clue you in on this that much, Damian. He's open a lot. That's why he's so good. He gets open a lot, and the Giants are going to have to find ways to force feed him the ball because there's not a lot of other options in New York right now. But also, there's no confidence in the guy that they have slinging the pill around. And this time next year, my hope is the Giants can at least have another guy in there. There's this draft coming up. There's a lot of different, players in college football right now that look promising, that can beat quarterbacks. The guy at Texas, Quinn Ewers, looks really good.
Mahomes Jr.
Dylan Raiola's only a freshman, though. He's only a freshman.
He looks good, man.
He looks ready to go today. If Dylan Raiola,
not only is he showed up against Colorado, which we know the bright light,
that's easy though.
The spotlight is the brightest. I feel like that was the challenge from that game, managing the spotlight.
The spotlight, yeah.
And he managed pretty well. So as a freshman, he showed that he has that maturity.
He is cosplaying Mahomes, which is a little bit weird to me, and I think he needs to maybe dial that back a bit because it's a little too glazy. But if you're gonna cosplay, if you're gonna mimic, if you're going to emulate any other guy in football right now, why not have it be the guy who literally can only be compared to Tom Brady? There's no quarterback in the NFL today that you should even put in the same sentence with Patrick Mahomes until proven so. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, that's the only guy in the conversation, and Dylan Raiola's trying to mimic his game around Mahomes, so I get it.
Smart man.
But back to the original point here, Daniel Jones, who's in his 6th year with the Giants, I really do think that with Brian Daboll and his ability to scheme up an offense and maybe teach him, if Dylan Raiola had a full off season with the New York Giants and got to train and practice, I bet like hell Malik Nabers wishes that he would have had a guy who's a freshman at Nebraska and Dylan Raiola at quarterback for him instead of Daniel Jones. And that's the sad part for the New York Giants, and that's why I don't feel bad for him.
And all he would have to do is beat out Daniel Jones. I'm sure the expectations aren't too much.
That's not, you don't have to beat out Daniel Jones. He's beating himself out. Since he signed that 4-year, $160 million deal, Damian, he's thrown 2 touchdown passes. He's thrown 3 pick sixes in that same time.
And he pretty much booted Saquon Barkley out of town.
Yeah, because you can't pay him if you're going to be paying this guy that much money. They didn't feel like they had enough space in their salary cap, which they did, to pay Saquon Barkley. And you literally gifted the Eagles the version of Christian McCaffrey that the 49ers got a couple years ago from the Panthers. So good job to that, doing that within your division, Giants.
A younger version.
A younger and a guy that's had less touches to date than McCaffrey did going into that. So that's an extreme situation as well.
And he's in the division.
In the division. Even though the Giants, it doesn't matter who's in their division right now because they're likely going to line up on Sunday and lose to whoever they play. But who in sports do you feel bad for? Who in football specifically, either their situation is so dire, their play has been so horrendous, or maybe you just are a person with a really big heart and it's full of sympathy. Who do you feel bad for? Because for me, it's Malik Neighbors and really anybody else who has to go out there and put their bodies on the line, put their effort on the line, sweat, blood, and tears, knowing that you likely don't have a chance to win that football game because you got number 8 at quarterback and you're stuck with him. 888-760-3776. 888-760-3776. That's the number for the Baptist Health Hotline. Hit us up. Tell us who in sports are you starting to feel bad for? Right? People are piling on maybe. The situation's obviously not great, and you're just like, you know what? This dude deserves a break. We're all human beings. We got sympathy. We got empathy in our hearts. Hit us up on the Baptist Health Hotline. Are you experiencing foot and ankle pain and need to see an expert in the field? Baptist Health Orthopedic Care has a team of foot and ankle orthopedic surgeons and specialists who are regarded as leaders in their specialty. Visit baptisthealth.net/ortho to learn more today. Baptist Health Orthopedic Care combines its resources of experienced physicians and leading-edge treatments and technology to provide advanced orthopedic, foot and ankle, joint replacement, spine, and sports medicine care. Visit baptisthealth.net/ortho for more information today. Baptist Health Orthopedic Care has offices conveniently located in Palm Beach County through the Florida Keys. Learn more by visiting baptisthealth.net/ortho. It is a day of sympathy. It is a hump day here on Theoretically Speaking. And as Jonathan Greenard, literally the guy whose job it was to make Daniel Jones's Sunday a living hell, as he was actively doing so, admits on WFAN that he and his Vikings teammates, by the way, led by defensive coordinator Brian Flores, who's been doing a heck of a job out there in Minnesota, he and his Viking teammates literally felt bad for the guy. Was beating him so bad he started to feel a little sympathy. Almost like me sometimes when I'm whipping somebody on in a video game or something. You know, I'm on Madden and I'm pouring it on. Another pick six. He's getting frustrated. He's throwing 4 verts at me all the time. I'm reading that. I mean, I'm doing cover 2 man. I'm picking that off as well. Like, it gets ugly sometimes. You start to feel a little bad. But you got to keep going.
I mean, the Vikings do have a good season. Just to read you off some stats from last year. Since week 8, when Kirk Cousins went down, they were number 1 in touchdowns allowed with 5, number 1 in shutouts, 4th in points per game at 16, 4th in rushing yards per game at 79, and so on. So they do have a good defense. They did, and they still do with Brian Flores. He likes to bring the rush. But still, I still don't think that factors into how bad the Giants looked. I think they'll look bad against the worst defense in the league.
I think, look, I just got Mike Jones here. Who? Mike Jones, our teammate here at ESPN West Palm, just tweeted out probably the craziest take of all time for me, a college freshman over a starting quarterback. And you talked about how great that Vikings defense is. That can't be undermined in this. They did go up against a great unit. The Vikings will likely have a top 5 defense by the end of this year. Mark my words. Based on what they did last year, the additions they were able to make, as well as a second season of Brian Flores getting those guys all on the same page. I expect them to be good on defense. And then Kevin O'Connell will try to make his way with Sam Darnold in that offense, which, I mean, they're off to a really good start. That NFC North, it's going to get interesting. He's saying I got the worst take, or maybe one of the craziest takes of all time, a college freshman over a starting NFL quarterback. Well, I know it's crazy to think Dylan Raiola of Nebraska could actually be an improvement from a guy who has started in the league in Daniel Jones. But given that circumstance, I'm giving specifically for the New York Giants this year, specifically, I would think that, and I don't think I'm alone on this, I think Giants fans themselves would rather have that 19-year-old quarterback at Nebraska and Dylan Raiola than Daniel Jones, who we know who he is. We know what he is at this point. He's a turnover machine. He's a pick-six machine. I mean, he couldn't do any worse than Daniel Jones. What would be the issue? What would be the harm in putting a guy like Dylan Raiola? It's not like he's as slender as Shedeur Sanders.
Contract. He would be on a rookie contract.
I mean, literally. I mean, I guess his NIL deal is probably pretty stacked up at Nebraska. You just let him play for the NIL deal. I don't know. Like, obviously, it's a hypothetical. It's a ridiculous question to pose because of the health issues, right? You wouldn't want to put a kid out there in front of these grown men. But, like, what would go wrong? Daniel Jones got injured for the season last year. So if he does that, if that's the only thing you fear is him getting hurt, well, Daniel Jones is going to do that too. Or he's shown to do that in the past. And I guarantee you he wouldn't be as fooled as Daniel Jones seems to continue to be by defenses in the NFL if you gave him a full offseason with an offensive genius like Brian Daboll and you let him scheme some stuff up for it. You make it simple. You keep it simple. The dude is out here emulating Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure he can get by better than what Daniel Jones is out there doing, and I don't know who the hell he's emulating. I don't know who he's cosplaying out there. He's really cosplaying the opposing team. He's really wearing a jersey for the enemy, the way he keeps throwing the ball to him. But again, this is not me lining up to take shots at Daniel Jones. The Giants fans are doing that enough. This is more so about Daniel Jones getting all of this sympathy, not just from fans, not just from fans. Tina, who pulled up for the happy hour yesterday, said she felt bad for Daniel Jones. And then you got his opposition that are literally lining up in the trenches, trying to get after him, saying they feel bad for him actively. And I have to be the one with the smarts to say, why do y'all feel bad for this dude who's sitting on this load of cash when you got guys who are trying to play for contracts in the NFL who are being held back by poor quarterback play, and it has to stay that way because you paid the guy so much money. 888-760-3776, 888-760-3776. Hit us up on the Baptist Health Hotline. Who do you feel bad for in football today? Because for me, it's Malik Neighbors, who went from catching deep balls and slot fades from Jaden Daniels all year in Baton Rouge and now is in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And he's going to be freezing his tail off this winter as he's looking over his head as Daniel Jones sells another one over the sideline. We got George and Delray Beach. He joins us here on Theoretically Speaking on a Wednesday. George, what's happening with you? Do you think I'm as crazy as Mike Jones thinks I am for saying Dylan Raiola would be better than Daniel Jones right now for the Giants?
Little bit. Is he going to have time to throw? Number one, does he have a running game? Number two, that is a horrible team, and I'm a Giants fan.
So you're giving Daniel Jones the excuses of, you're right. They improved the offensive line. It doesn't look much better. The running game is at a bit of a deficit right now, and that's partially their fault for letting Saquon Barkley walk. But do you really have confidence, given that those are the circumstances, right? We know what the circumstances are. Do you have confidence that Daniel Jones is going to give you any more of a chance to win in those circumstances, which we've seen and he's failed at miserably? Then, yeah, sure, a little 19-year-old kid who doesn't know right from wrong, but again, I'm saying with a full training camp, with a full offseason with Brian Daboll, he would be able to maybe do some things. You still think Daniel Jones will be better than Dylan Raiola?
Will he have time to throw? Will he have a running game? I mean,
no.
If the ghost of Wyatt Tittle came back, he wouldn't have time to throw either.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't have time to throw. He wouldn't have a running game. So you're saying this is not on Daniel Jones. You want the Giants to give him another chance and come back next year?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. I appreciate the call, George. I appreciate the call. That's actually shocking for me to hear, because even when Daniel Jones had some things in place that looked like it was going well for them, it wasn't like he blew anything out of the water. It wasn't like he was a guy that other teams were claiming, oh, man, we got to get ourselves a guy like Daniel Jones in here. Like, he inched that team through. Brian Daboll schemed up things in a offense that was catered to Daniel Jones to do well, and he still only came out with like 15 touchdowns. That was a Saquon Barkley-led offense. That's the thing that's forgot about that one year that the Giants did do well. It was because Saquon spent the most of that year healthy, and they were able to revolve it around him. Obviously, it's hyperbole to want a freshman quarterback to come in there and ball for the Giants. But it also is just more so a highlight of just how bad it's been for Daniel Jones and just how shaken his confidence is right now. I know who would have more confidence lining up for the Giants this weekend against the Commanders. And again, I'll put my money on Dylan Raiola. Damian, you obviously feel like you're on the same side of the fence as Mike Jones and our guy George in Delray Beach. It just, to me, is like I can't feel like the Giants players in that same locker room would want to go through another season with that dude at quarterback.
I'm actually on your side. I think anything is better than Daniel Jones at the moment. I mean, he brought up the excuse of the O-line, the running game, which is fair.
They invested in the O-line.
He's right. But, I mean, last year, the backup, I forget his name, the chicken cutlets.
Oh, yeah. Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito.
Yeah. I mean, he looked better than Daniel Jones in the short stint that he had. So, personally, I don't want anything to do with Daniel Jones next year. Anything is better, and let's go in a different direction.
When you've thrown more pick sixes than touchdowns, you can't keep blaming your offensive line in a run game that's absent.
He had 42 attempts, and he didn't even break 200 yards.
He's bad. And it's not his fault that he's bad. The Giants are the ones that reinvested in him. The Giants are the ones that keep trotting him out there. And when you have defenders on the other side saying we feel bad for that guy, that's more telling to me than anything, because that's not how football generally works.